Welcome to the BuildWise podcast, where construction meets wisdom. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the construction industry. We're going to share insightful tips, dive into the latest trends. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting started in your journey of construction, BuildWise is your go-to source for valuable insights. Let's build a smarter, wiser future together. Like and subscribe now, and stay tuned for a foundation of knowledge in every episode. I am your host, Dan O'Neill, and this is this is Devon Fletcher, and we're going to be talking about how kind of the industry ties to some real estate referral stuff. And Devon's been, I'll let you go ahead and tell me, Devon, what you're all about.
Well, thanks for having me, Dan. I appreciate it. I'll give you kind of some of my background for those of you who don't know me. I've been in the Valley here since 2006. Right now, I am a realtor, so I do real estate on the residential end. And how that came to be is I had a background in construction. So I actually have a degree in residential architectural design that I got out of college.
Nice.
I always loved houses and how they were put together and built. It's kind of for me, it's kind of a guy thing. It's the fundamentals of how something is made. So we'll take it apart and try to put it back together, or figure out a better mousetrap, a better way to do it. But in doing that, I quickly found that residential design, as great as it was, I was sitting at a computer all day. So
That's kind of no more than you are now.
Well, kind of, to some degree. I'm out in the field a lot more. But the recession hit in 2006. We had moved up here right about that time. So I started a handyman service to just make ends meet.
Yeah.
And slowly but surely, the Lord really blessed that handyman service. And we got to a point where we had 5 employees. My wife, Missy, was doing the scheduling and the administration of all that. But in 2014, I just really had almost a mental breakdown of, this isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life. And babysitting employees was tough, but I loved what I did at the same time. So just prayed about it. I feel like God had taken me to real estate, which I didn't want to do, but that's a whole nother story. So I got into real estate, and it's actually been really wonderful. It's brought in the components of my background in residential design and architecture, and also the construction end of things, knowing how things are put together and built, and it's just become a great field. But it's also brought its own, interesting factors when it comes to working with builders or working with vendors. So,
well, and that's kind of why we started the whole podcast, is to bring some light to some subject matters for the Valley here, and some comparisons and some different perspectives on each from different people. It's not just me trying to, not just me having an issue with something. It's, I want to hear what everybody else has to say and their experiences with different things. And so, as a realtor that you're referring people or trying to refer people and things like that, what are, couple things, what are probably your top things that you want to see from a sub or a contractor in order for you to refer them? And what are some of the things that you've seen that are probably, that could be changed, that could be better?
Oh, yeah.
As far as that, what you've seen with people and stuff like that. So, and I know we've talked about it and I know what I've said, but, let's hear from you.
Well, it's a great question, because one of the things my clients, when I did my handyman service, mentioned to me once I did real estate was they would call me for referrals for everything. I mean, from car repair to, another handyman, to, hey, do you know a good therapist? And I'm not kidding. It was really interesting how they just trusted in the referrals that I had, because I knew that I knew people. So in doing that, it was hard to refer people that weren't as good as I was. And I don't want to pat my own back, but I really cared about my business. I cared about how It impacted my clients. The job that I did, I always, refer to myself as having a higher authority. What's that old Wiener Schnitzel? No, not Wiener Schnitzel. What's a hot dog? Oscar.
Yeah. Oscar Mayer Wiener.
No, we answer to a higher source. It's another one, not Oscar Mayer. It's the kosher hot dog.
Oh, I didn't know.
No,
We started talking about food. I was going to get into tacos next.
tacos. But I always referred to how I referred people. I wanted to refer good quality. So it's hard to get that here in the Valley, to be honest with you.
It's a crapshoot. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is a roll of the dice. Occasionally, you get someone good.
Yeah.
And then consistencies seems to be a problem. Like they might be good one day, but not good the next.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, finding people with the same mindset I had was, my whole mindset is do it right the first time, so you don't have to pay extra to do it again. And so if you get that mindset, then take the time to do it right. Take the energy to do it right. If you're not bidding it properly, that's your own fault. You need to bid things right. But take the time to do it right. It's not that much extra to do it right. So, if you're just thinking, well, I'll do it this way and they'll be okay with it. Well, how are you going to get another referral out of that? A wise man once told me, you never know where your next $20,000 referral is going to come from. And I always keep that in mind. I mean, I could be talking to someone in the line of a coffee shop, but realistically, where's my sphere of influence? I talk about that in real estate.
Yeah.
My sphere of influence is who I get to work with. So if I'm doing the best for them and they see that and they feel it, it's much easier for them to refer me because they're like, hey, Devon knows what he's doing. He cares about you. He cares about what he's doing. And if he can't do it, he'll be honest with you and he'll have someone who can do that.
Yeah, my experience has been that, it's really, that and we keep using these cliche sayings, it's hard to soar with eagles when you work with turkeys.
Yeah.
And I feel like that seems to be what I'm dealing with all the time. You set up a good plan, you talk to everybody, you give them drawings, and then for some reason or another, they're going, oh yeah, we don't do it that way here, or I didn't read it that way, or I didn't read it at all. I just had somebody on a project. He changed the direction of the soffit material without asking, and I'm like, who gave you that permission? Who you call me about everything else under the sun? Why wouldn't you call me about that? Crazy.
Well, and I think it goes back to what are the differences between here and let's say, other locations, and how things are built or understood. You and I have the same mindset. When you have a set of construction documents, plans, those are instruction manuals on what the expectation is at the end of the day. That's your blueprint. So you're bidding off of that. You need to read them thoroughly. You need to bid accordingly. And if you miss something, that's on you. There's a little bit different mindset sometimes that I've found here in the Valley is, call it old school, or I don't know. I think it's just a different mindset of how things are done that I think needs to change. Is at the end of the day, you're the contractor, or the client is the person paying you. They have a certain thing in their mind and how they want it to be finished. Now, there's 10 ways to get it finished. You want to do it in the most efficient way and cost-effective way. They may want it in the most time-efficient way as far as, your clients. But the guy actually doing it, he may have his own way. So that's why we need to give him a set of instructions on how to do that. But I tend to find with like a lot of vendors, they don't follow that. I'm with you on that. It's frustrating. And so I kind of look at it this way. My job is to train the people that I'm referring on what my expectations are. Therefore, I'm going to give you more referrals. You're going to get more money, so to speak. You're going to get better reviews. And at some point, your business should naturally become a completely referral business where you don't have to market or advertising because you're doing a good job.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And in one of our previous podcasts, we did talk about plans and, the construction documents and what goes into planning. And so, it's a pretty arrogant contractor that you figure someone's taken the time to draw plans, to design it, to consult with architects and engineers and design professionals, and this whole concept to relay what the client wants. And then as a contractor, you just come in and go, "Oh, this is the way we do it here." That is the most arrogant, thing I've ever heard of in my life. It's like there is no regard for all that effort. So you're one guy, and then you go and you just arbitrarily change something like that soffit material I was talking about. It's like, who, what are you thinking? It's just like that's the problem. It's whatever's easiest. And so it's a little more of the cowboy mentality and shooting from the hip kind of thing is what I think they do most of the time. And then there's not a whole lot of recourse and there's not a lot of accountability. And so on one of the other podcasts we did, regulations, to regulate or not to regulate. I came to Idaho hoping to get away from some of the strict regulations that we had. But to be honest with you, we need probably not as many as California, but we need some that stop this kind of nonsense.
Yeah, and I agree. I hate regulation, but I think, my joke was always Idaho is 20 years behind everyone else in every aspect, not just construction. But there needs to be some more regulation, both in the building industry, home inspections, as far as what are the expectations are. Because ultimately, like I have regulations in real estate to protect the consumer. Mm-hmm. That's what they're for. And regulations in construction should be to protect the consumer. And we do have a little bit more cowboy way of doing things here. I used to get frustrated because when I did design build in architecture, I spent every minute on sometimes the difference between an inch and a half inch. And actually, there's a good builder here that he used to do a set of plans that was to the quarter inch. Now, mind you, in construction documents, that's ridiculous.
Well, framers only have quarter marks on their
that's
tape.
true.
I'm kidding, by the way. I'm kidding.
But the reason he did that is to save in cost of labor. So instead of cutting a sheet of 4x8 plywood, he would use a full sheet and a full sheet and a full sheet, so you'd save labor on time. And that's how he got his subcontractors to come in so inexpensively. But it was in the design. If they didn't follow that design, then they'd be stuck, cutting and having all these extras and throwaways.
Right.
So it came down to waste and labor management. But it was on the design end, going back to that, it was frustrating when I'd spend all this time doing a set of plans, give them to a contractor, and then in their mindset it was, well, we'll figure it out in the field and we'll just change things.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes changing that 1 inch thing makes a big difference in how a room functions, how a room feels. It's really fascinating to me, that a contractor, I get frustrated at contractors too. Just follow the set of plans that I designed for you. It's not that hard. If you have any questions, then ask me.
Well, it's funny. I had a lot of people don't know how to read plans. That's part of the problem.
True.
I mean, and to know where to find information. So, like, I had a contractor, a framer. I gave him not only the drawings, but I walked over. I handed him the cut sheets for the doors, and so he goes, "What's this for?" And I go, "Well, it's got all the rough openings." "Well, the rough openings on the plans." I said, "They're not always right." I go, "You got to check it against this." And he goes, "Oh." And I'm just dumbfounded at just the lack of true construction knowledge, because people think that construction knowledge is, hey, I can swing a hammer. I've put that window in before. I've done this. I've done that. But true knowledge is the depth of how to find things. And we on the plan thing. Did you watch that podcast? By the way?
I didn't know.
Shame on you.
I know.
So, the true, what I call follow the rabbit trail. It can go from architectural, take you to structural take you to the geotechnical report.
Right.
You got to like double check it with specs. Because the specs might call for a certain, steel grade on your rebar.
Right.
And then, it can go all over the place. And unless you follow that entire rabbit trail, it's like reading Cliff Notes in a book. I mean, you don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
And you're going to make mistakes if you don't follow that rabbit trail.
And that's true because here we have, when people say contractor licensing, we don't have a licensing here. We have a registration. You register as a contractor. You need a business name, business license, and insurance, business insurance. And you can get a quote-unquote license here, but it's really a registration. So there's no formal way to find out, does this guy know what he's doing? Let me ask you a question. You see on a set of plans, on a door swing, and it says 3068. What's your interpretation of that?
3 foot 6'8". That's the door size, but it's not the rough opening size.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You know how many contractors or subs that I find out that'll say, why is the door so small? What do you mean? Well, it's a 30-inch by 68-inch door. Why is it so short? It's tough if they don't understand the construction documents or know how to read them. So who does that fall back on with the understanding of you're a contractor or a subcontractor and you can't read a set of plans?
Well, you can't even diagnose information at all. Like it's not even plans, it's just, it's sad. It really is sad. It's refreshing when you get somebody that does.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of people surprise me and I'm like, you actually read the notes on the plan, on the general notes page?
Yeah.
I'm proud of you, that's like really good,
Right.
And, it brings up good questions. Like they actually said, hey, the general notes say this, the plans say that. I'm like, hey, great catch.
Yeah.
Let's go investigate,
Let's go bust the architect for that.
Yeah. Although the architects, they have that little thing, contractor must verify.
Yeah. The disclaimers.
Yeah, it's like cross that out. No, but it's true. Honestly, contractors should verify. We had a sheet metal guy go up and we gave him a little drawing of kind of what we anticipated the sheet metal as a step sheet metal fascia. Guy orders $14,000 in sheet metal. And he goes, hey, it's short. I said, well, did you measure it? He goes, no, we went by your drawing, the drawing that the owner gave us. I said, well, first of all, the owner didn't give you that. We did. So you don't even know where you're getting your information from. And secondly, if it was an owner, shame on you for trusting that measurement. It's like, what irresponsible move was that to, order $14,000 in sheet metal? And as the guy doing the work and ordering the material, why wouldn't you go check it?
Right.
Why wouldn't you verify it? I mean, it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
And they went, whoa, and it's just like, they don't care.
Yeah. And
this was probably the fourth sheet metal guy that we talked to.
Yeah.
Which they've all been a little quirky and kooky and none of them really do a thorough, they don't do their job.
Yeah. And as frustrating as that is, though, I look at it now, Dan, as, okay, we have a lot of this element. So what's my job? What do I can sit here and moan and complain about it the whole time and get frustrated at these guys and go on to the next guy and find it again, or I can train and teach.
Well, and that's honestly what this podcast is for.
Right.
And I'm hoping that you share it with people. We start sharing this kind of information going around because I want them to hear what the expectation level is. We're trying to raise that expectation level.
Right.
And we're trying to educate. I don't, and that's the other thing too. It's, we can, it's easy to rag and to bag on people and things,
Yeah.
but it also is the opportunity to present it and say, hey, you guys, this is not, you want to be that next caliber sub that's up here, you got to quit doing this down here. And you got to understand that there is more out there to learn as a contractor. And then I'm hoping we start seeing this divide and this gap start to happen where, we branch off, maybe 3/4 of the guys start, bringing themselves up to that level. And then things change a little bit. And then, maybe there's this ragtag crew down here that, they don't really care about plans and stuff. They just want to do whatever. But,
Yeah.
That's the hope, anyway, of this podcast.
Well, I have a handful of friends that are general contractors, so similar as yourself, with the same frustrations. But what I've watched over the decades that I've been doing this is these guys will take the time to teach and train these subs on how they want it done. Can I give a shameless plug?
Sure.
Okay. Good friend of mine, he's also trained his subs what his expectations are. And he's worked with those same subs, if not 10 years, 20 years in some cases. So he's taken the time to invest in them and also pay them decently well. He's not an inexpensive contractor. But his clients also have that expectation of him because he delivers. So I think it's to change the industry. Instead of complaining about it, we have to take the time to try to teach and train and understand, and then also invest in the people that are willing to accept change. If I've got a subcontractor that I'm trying to refer out to, and he just wants to do it his way, well, I'm going to find out if his way fits what my referral is, and if it doesn't, I'm going to find someone else. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, and we do the same as much as we can. I got to tell you, it's been few and far in between finding those subs that are willing to take that educational maybe seat,
Yeah.
or listen to you. It's funny how many times I've walked on the job and I'm like, hey man, we got a lot of other work for you. We'd really like to see, you do this, and this. Make sure you don't do this and do it like that, and really watch for this. And then you come back the next day and they did everything you told them not to do. And you're just like, really?
Yeah.
And so I'm finding that we do have a handful of people that are doing that now. They're doing good. And they're willing to listen, and they're, starting to read plans, being a little more thorough. And that's great. It's like awesome. That's taking that next step up. But there's still a lot that don't. And, it's great that, I'm sure that if you went back and talked to your guy that you just shamelessly plugged, that, he probably went through quite a few before he got to that handful.
Right.
So, it takes a while. And so we're on that cusp of finding those people. And I'm finding commercial, residential, in the commercial side of things, there is a different professionalism than in the residential. And it'd be nice to see that migrate a little bit into the residential.
Now, you're right in that aspect. And I have a hard time understanding why.
Me too. It's like I can almost have the same sub go do a commercial job, and he'll be more attentive and more thought-provoking and everything else. And then he goes to a residential job, and all of a sudden he puts on his dumb hat.
I have a theory behind that.
Okay.
Because
enlighten me, Grasshopper.
You did a project one time I remember visiting, and I knew the HVAC guy who did it.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. He did a great job. But when you do a commercial project, especially one that a lot of people are going to visit, now it becomes theirs. They have skin in the game. Their name is on it.
Yeah.
So, when they go by, every contractor wife understands this. You're driving around town and your contractor husband will go, I did that. Oh yeah, I worked on that house. Oh, I remodeled that.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about a commercial property, it's interesting because, you can go there and visit. Let's say it's a restaurant, and you go there and you can point out, my brother-in-law does this because he's a painter and he's done commercial projects. Yeah, that's right. We forgot to cut that in and it's still there. I see it. We have this eye to detail. I think with commercial, they do a better job because their name's on it more, because someone will actually say, oh yeah, that certain company did that. And they're either going to say, oh, that looks fantastic. It's wonderful for guys like me who have that eye. Or we're going to look at that and go, man, I did never use that guy again. Does he even know what a square is?
Yeah.
Does he know how to figure out a square without a square in his hand?
Yeah. What?
It's not a square, it's a triangle.
It's a triangle.
What's a triangle? I got the peanut gallery back here. Producer Brianna.
Okay, Brianna, let me ask you this.
She obviously flunked algebra.
It's called
Geometry. I definitely flunked. All the math, but he's saying square and you're saying triangle.
It's a triangle.
Do you know what a 3, 4, 5 method is for finding something that's square? No. Okay. Dan, you want to explain it? And let's use this as a teaching lesson.
Yeah, you can also use 6, 8, 10.
Wait, this is why I'm not the contractor.
That's how you check square on a corner.
Yep.
If you pull 6 feet one way or 3 feet one way, it's always in those denominators. But 3, 4, 5, you go 3 foot, 4 foot, you should have 5 foot between them.
Cool. I'll tuck that into my pocket.
Yeah.
It's actually a good method. It
Oh,
works.
actually, Dan ran into this on one of his projects. He did an aerial shot with the drone and saw that the footings were out of square.
Yeah.
You know, I actually had that on a project back in Newport Beach one time, and we were doing design build, and we went and visited the site before they poured. They were just about to pour, and we looked at it and go, "That's not square." This contractor said, "I know it's square, and I'll bet you lunch it's square." We did the 3, 4, 5 method, and he was off by 1.5 feet.
What?
It was way, I mean, it was to the naked eye, it's way off. So he fixed it right before the pour, and it was fascinating because it actually encroached on the setback. Had he poured that and it encroached on the setback, now Newport Beach is stringent on their setbacks.
Oh, heck yeah. Well,
Yeah.
all places are stringent on their setbacks.
That's true. That portion would have been 6 inches into the setback, and he would have had to saw cut that at his expense afterwards, and it would have looked bad.
Why is the house at a 45 right here? Well, we're just missing the property line,
Yeah.
the setback. Yeah, no, I did that overlay of the form boards. I kept looking at it. I'm like, something's skewed, something's goofy. And I was, cross-siding and aligning stuff, that you can walk through a project really quick and pick up on things that aren't aligned or square or something by, cross-siding. And I'm going, man, something's not right. So I sent the drone up, snapped a picture, right over it.
Yeah.
And then I overlaid the plans on it, and that whole thing was askew. So told the subcontractor, and he swears up and down. He goes, "Oh, that's just the angle of the camera." And I'm like, I built memory centers, 45,000 square foot buildings and 80,000 square foot buildings, caught so many things with that drone shot, and gotten, big dollar surveyors and architects and engineers to change stuff because of that. And this guy would not. So he said he hired a surveyor to come out and check it and said it was square. Well, I was gone at the time, and I said, "Well, what's the guy's name?" He wouldn't tell me.
Right.
Yeah. And so I'm like, "All right, well, you're full of it, And then I come back and I look at it, and it's like, I can tell, like, I walk up and I'm like, "All right, when did you fix it?" Because it was different. It had changed. And I go, I could tell it was square. I go, it looked a lot better. Yeah. So I said, "Well, we're going to 3, 4, 5 this. We're going to pull some tapes." I said, "All right, well, when did you change it?" And he goes, "We didn't." I'm like, I don't know who you think you're BSing, but, it's just crazy. It's like, why? Why not just go, "Hey, man, good catch." Honestly, that's all I'm looking for is, "Hey, great catch. Sorry, sorry about that. We'll pay more attention next time." Whatever, just don't lie.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I talk to a lot of people about in my business is integrity.
Yeah.
In fact, I was chatting with my title company over lunch last week about this, because she asked me a similar question, like, why do you use us? Why do you refer us? And I said, really, it comes back to, I have a lot of grace and mercy for people who either make bad decisions or do things wrong. Now, if you do something wrong and you don't own up to it or apologize or just do anything to change it to what it should be, I might give you grace once, but after the second time or maybe even the third time, I'm done. All it comes back to, especially in business, is take ownership of what you're doing. No one's perfect. You're going to make a mistake. That's a gimme. You're not going to make always the best choices in your business. But if you find that you've done it incorrectly, own up to it, apologize. It's kind of similar with marriage. And that's something we don't do a lot of times. Own up to it, apologize, and say, "How can I fix it?"
Yeah. Good analogy.
Yeah. Well,
except for the fact that I think in marriage we probably tend to not own up to it as much as we would in business.
Yeah, it's kind of never our fault. I think
I
it's
know,
a
right?
total guy thing.
I know.
But I would rather have someone that's workable. A pastor friend of mine uses this acronym, and this is just kind of a Christian-based thing, but it applies to business too. FAT, F-A-T. If you have someone who is faithful, someone who is available, and someone who is teachable, that's all God wants out of someone, one of his believers. Okay?
Yeah.
So in business, it's very much similar. I want someone, at least as a subcontractor, to be faithful in the aspects of just do what I ask you to do. And that's kind of, it's a stretch to say faithful. Are you available? Do you have the availability to get it in the time frame that I need? And if you make mistakes, are you willing to come back to do that? But are you teachable? I think that's the hardest thing to do, is to find a subcontractor or a vendor that's teachable, that's open to being taught. Because look, I have that mindset of I'm usually right on most everything I do. So it's a little bit self-centered, or, what's the word, Bree? It's selfish, to some degree, arrogant. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. I appreciate that.
Pig-headed.
It comes across as arrogant, but I also think it has it's confidence in what you're doing, because I've taken the hits. I've made the changes to adjust to do things right. And I have that mindset of I want it done right the first time in myself.
Yeah. Well, and I wouldn't say that it's arrogance. The arrogance comes in the fact that we know where to look for the information. True. And it's more of and I wouldn't say it's arrogance, it's confidence. It's like, I know that no matter and I tell everybody, in construction, there's a process for just about every issue, construction protocols. And so if we use those protocols each time we run into a situation, if you know them, there is a proper way to find out information or change the way you're doing things properly. Because it's not that it doesn't always, two-dimensional always looks great, on paper. But sometimes you get out in the field and it's just not going together the way you want. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't give you the carte blanche thing to just go, oh, I'm just going to change it. If you follow the protocol, and at the end of the day, you've got this golden ticket that says you got permission to do that through all the sources that had something to do with the plans: architect of record, engineer of record, sales engineer of record, surveyor of record, whatever a case may be, you've got that information. And so, I don't know if any subcontractors have had to deal with latent defects or anything like that, but you get into something like that and someone goes, why did you not do it per the plan? And if you pull that out and you go, this is why, and they'll go, oh, wow. But if you don't, you're on the hook.
Yeah.
And, one of these days that's going to happen to some of these subcontractors, and there's going to be some heck to pay and some reckoning, and they're going to wish they followed those protocols or paid attention and listened a little more intently. But it's a confidence level, because what went into the drawings. That if it's wrong and someone brings you information like, hey, dude, this is not working, you're like, oh, you know what? Let's look at that.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of things with you where we've looked at things and you're like trying to, figure out how to make it work into your, side of your house, and different things that we discussed, and the structure, and, the layout of that one footing that looked offset and things like that. But when you look at it and you catch it and you resolve it with everybody that's been involved in the design, you have this unanimous decision, and everybody can move forward with the same confidence.
Yeah.
So anyway. Well, we're a bunch of blowhards. We can go on forever.
Yeah, we could. There was someone that's what I was going to come back to. So regulation. We talked about regulation at the beginning.
Yeah.
So these things should and will change, because why are regulations made in the first place? Do you have a thought behind that? Let's say just construction regulations. Why are they so much more stringent, let's say, in a state like California or Colorado? We'll use some C states.
Because they're C states.
Yeah, Connecticut.
Because
falls
they've
under
been
that.
through issues that they've had. Every time there's an issue, they put a regulation on it
Or a lawsuit.
or a lawsuit.
Right.
Well, when I say issue, that's kind of what I was referring to.
Right.
But yeah, there's been something that's happened that says never again, we're changing the law.
So why do we have to wait for a lawsuit to happen for someone to be wronged in order for a good regulation to come?
Well, and that's what's happening here right now is it's just an open door to have issues and with lawsuits or defects. You know, you might swing a hammer and go, okay, great, and walk away. You know, 5 years later, that house has a leak and it's got a problem, and you know, sub that they use like, hey, it ain't my fault. It's been 5 years. You know, it's I only warranty it for a year.
Yeah.
You know, but those things have got to. They're going to happen if they're not happening already. And I know I run into all kinds of situations like that where you're just like, you know, you're not following things. You know, I'm going to be on the hook for it later because I'm the one that's going to be the responsible one.
Yeah.
And I want to see it done right. And if I know my subs are doing it right, then I've got that confidence that we're not going to have those kind of issues. And to be honest with you, we really haven't that I can think of any, you know, per se.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you might have a little dribble or leak or, you know, from caulking or something, but I mean, it's nothing major, but you know, you don't want those serious issues. Like the thing that went on in California for a long time was the apartments, you know, and stuff like that, like window details and flashing. Like it was hard to get insurance. Like your insurance would be triple if you wanted to build an apartment building because they had so many latent defects for windows and doors because people did not follow the flashing details.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal for a while. And then finally, because of all the lawsuits, people got the message.
Yeah.
And then now, and because our insurance rates went up and, you know, everyone's like, you know, it finally changed that whole thing. But it took all that to do it. Why?
Yeah.
Why not just do it right?
Yeah.
And that's the big question of the day. And that's the regulation part. And, you know, it's like, and I think that, you know, to carry it on just one more note further is when I think inspectors need to be out and when they're looking at stuff instead of, and I know they're busy, I know there's good inspectors out there that do this, but rather than chew on maybe the general contractor, why not write up that subcontractor? Why not scold him going, are you kidding me? Who, you know, who does this, you know? And then it's kind of like it becomes peer pressure a little bit. And then, you know, to keep them, you know, straight on the straight and narrow. And, you know, they're not doing that. You know, they just, you know, they'll just call the GC and said you failed.
Yeah.
And then you walk out and you go, you know, I had a framer, he cut a micro lamb like 1.5 inches short in a hanger. And it's like, dude, that's a structural member.
Right.
I mean, what part of the tape measure were you reading? You know, it's like, it's just, and then to go ahead and stick it in, like I can understand miscutting it,
Right.
but why would you stick it in the hole and go, oh, you know, oh well, hope no one sees.
Yeah.
You know, it blows my mind. So, you know, I think that the framer or the inspector, you know, would have been great. Like, hey, listen, dude, if I catch you guys to keep doing this, we're gonna have a serious issue.
Yeah.
And I think there needs to be some big accountability going on in the construction neighborhood, you know, like other subs. Hey guys, that's, you know, I'm going to point that out to the owner, you know. So anyways, I think we got to wrap this up.
Okay.
We're probably way beyond. I know there's probably some stuff she's going to cut out, but anyways, you guys, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Please share this video. Leave any comments for any other information you'd like to hear. Maybe we can continue this conversation later. And then we want to thank you and say we appreciate the audience, and we hope that you guys get something good out of it. Thank you.
Thank you.